Welcome to the SFL Today, breaking down all of the action from a busy SFL Sunday. Hello, everybody. I'm Cameron Irvine, your play-by-play commentator for tonight's showdown in Tulsa, the Tulsa Desperados home opener against the Indianapolis Red Devils, both teams unbeaten. And I'm joined here tonight by my analyst, Stephen Mullinex, our stat man, Andy Hamilton. Stephen, how you doing?
Doing great tonight, Cam. How are you?
I'm good. Andy behind the glass, so to speak. How you doing, Andy?
Hey, feels good to come off of a win and be on the show as opposed to be coming off a loss.
There you go. Stephen knows what that's like. Oh, wait a
That's
minute.
a dig.
That was rough.
I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate it.
You asked if I was going to mention it, and I was like, well, maybe. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I won't say anything more. Sorry about it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
No, we have more entertaining games. Okay, all right.
For sure.
So let's start today recapping today's action with this. This is a photo of Atlanta's missed game-winning field goal. Not only did it hit the right upright, it hit the top of the right upright. Did anybody get to see this? Can you believe this? 10-12 was the final score. Sioux Falls gets the win. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this here?
I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that ever. in all of my time, it's just been watching football and being a fan of football, whether it's in the SFL or anywhere else. I mean, there are times when a field goal will go so high, you can't really tell if it's in or not. But to hit the top of the post like that, and for it to be in such a pivotal moment, just unheard of. And that means, guys, that's the excitement that we have in our game. It's so awesome that we're just really blessed right now with the quality games that we're getting from most teams, and man, heartbreaker, but boy, that's what a way to win that game. That's crazy.
Andy, what'd you think of this? Sioux Falls was not the only one that, Atlanta was not the only one that missed a field goal in the final 2 minutes. Sioux Falls missed one on the previous possession. Sparrows eke out the win. Their defense proven to be pretty dang good this year, and they stay undefeated.
Yeah, you talk about, both teams missing field goals. It's a rarity for one team to miss a field goal in the SFL, much less two. I mean, we had a team, I believe it was last week, miss a field goal with a star kicker. So there's a lot of, I would say realism in the league. We've seen the NFL kind of grow to have more missed field goals with the extra points moving back. And now I think it's very similar with the way that the SFL has moved with the progression system. These kickers are starting out at a lower rate, and they're missing a little bit more. But, with this miss at the end of regulation, I think that, like Steven said, goes back to the realism of the way that this league is built. And I think Mark Chisholm and the rest of the Atlanta Swarm realize that. And while it sucks to lose a game, I think they would agree that it was an awesome ride throughout this contest. And really a closer one than before. But yeah, you talked about it. The Sioux Falls defense gets the job done, holding Hollywood to 44 rushing yards. That's pretty incredible for a Sioux Falls defense. I think I said before the season that Sioux Falls was going to be a lot different this year than they were last year. And I think that's playing out pretty well here.
A couple of generic kickers can't make the big kick, and it eventually – the Sioux Falls Sparrows eke out the win. They beat Houston 17-12, beat Atlanta 12-10, beat Oklahoma City 24-13. So this is these have been some tight windows here for Sioux Falls, but they're getting the job done. And next week play Tulsa, potentially a battle of unbeatens there again at the top of the Central. Well, from generic kickers that missed to generic kickers that made it, the London Knights in overtime. Our first overtime game of the season beat Carolina. In the podcast, Ramos said a bold prediction there'd be 4 overtime games this week. We got 1. Potentially could have 3 if the last 2 games of the week go to OT, but it's not going to not going to reach. But London and Carolina gave us a thriller. Carolina was up 10-0. London just woke up in the fourth quarter. Carolina stormed back, almost won the game, forced overtime, and then London on the very first possession drove all the way down the field. You can see that from the stats of this game, pretty even game as the expansion Knights get the edge in the East, move to 2-1, and they're tied with Queen City for second place in that conference. Stephen, what have you seen out of London so far through the first few weeks that has your head turned?
Well, I'm a huge Liam supporter, so I'm very happy for him, he has a team build, that's kind of similar to ours, but they've been able to take advantage of some of those opportunities when they needed them the most. I think that's been the key. They're pounding it out. They're still struggling to find their identity a little bit, as most SFL teams are at this point, but they're still finding a way to win. You never want to leave the game on the foot of your kicker, especially a non-star kicker. But hey, at this point, you take the win however you can get it. If you're London, so proud and happy for Liam Crowder.
Andy, I think the important thing for the Skyhawks to take away from this game is, hey, look, we went to London, long road trip, played a pretty good ball game. I know London's an expansion team, but Liam is obviously an experienced coach. This Carolina team, when you look at their two losses, a heartbreaker, and then, now that we've seen Tallahassee against Queen City and Atlanta, their loss to the Pride is not looking as bad as it did in week one.
Yeah, I think both of these two teams are really strong teams. I think that's very evident by the 650 yards of offense between the two of them that they put together today. A lot of that is through the air, but don't knock those 84 rushing yards out of Carolina. We've seen a lot of teams struggle with rushing yards this season. 84 is a solid number for Carolina. I really think with the way that this London team has looked through the first 3 weeks, they're going to be solid, and I think Carolina has looked pretty strong too, despite being where they are record-wise. I think both of these teams have had really good seasons and are going to finish out really good throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, you talked about it, Cam, a really close game here, especially when you start getting into time of possession. I mean, you're looking at a difference of 38 seconds there between the two teams. It really doesn't get closer than that. I think this is one of those games where you sim it 100 times and you get 50 different outcomes. So on this day, on this given game, London was able to eke it out 16-13. But Carolina can hold their head high, knowing that the rest of the season they got a lot of good stuff coming.
Show me your bits. I love the little phrase there, Andy.
That's because I'm a single man now, Cam.
5 from Oofish, appreciate that. 1 from 124715, very fitting. Huzzah to the one. Director of Player Personnel with 45. Thanks so much. You can participate in giving the SFL Bits some financial support just by watching ads. You don't even have to spend any of your money, and you can watch those ads every day. London plays Mexico City next week. Carolina's at Queen City. The Corsairs are licking their wounds just like the Skyhawks. They got beat down pretty good today. 38-17. Tallahassee showed up for at least the second quarter. We do know that. Queen City actually won the first, third, and fourth quarters combined. We got outscored 28-0 in the second. Duke Wilson and Ken Gossett took over. Somebody needs to get the memo that Tallahassee loves to throw deep, and their receivers are pretty talented. Pride are 3-0 at the top of the very competitive East. Stephen, we saw Tallahassee last week. From what you saw to them in prime time and then what they were able to do today against a pretty good Queen City team, what is the method to the madness to beat this Pride squad?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge Frank Gooden fan, so obviously congratulations to him, Duval. But these two teams are like Ollie and Frazier. They are big punchers. They've been in the league for a long time. They are rivals. They've gone up against each other so many times, and it seems like one will get the best of the other for maybe the first part of the season, and it'll switch, and they'll switch again in the playoffs. It's just these two teams, they know what they're doing. They have quality owners. They've been doing it a long time. But for me, the key is, especially early on in player progression, is we're seeing a tendency of these bigger, better stacked wide receivers having a big advantage over some of these secondaries, especially, of course, here's a secondary that doesn't have any star corners. So I think we saw that advantage today. Obviously, those two wide receivers that they have that you mentioned are big time and playing big roles right now for the Tallahassee Pride. I see the defensive start to and these teams to start evening out as player progresses. But today, I don't want to take anything away from what the Tallahassee did. They just played their kind of game. Even though they didn't lead in time of possession, they made big splash plays, and those chunk plays were the difference for me.
Queen City offense showed up, 25 first downs, 387 total yards of offense, but not the points they wanted to show for it, and the defense really struggled with Tallahassee's vertical attack. Andy, you play the Pride next week when you finally get to play a home game. It's the Legion home opener, and you've got maybe the toughest test in the league on the schedule. I know you don't want to share necessarily how you might believe they can be stopped, but overall, what's your favorite part of what you've seen out of the Pride so far this year?
Well, I think they're a very solid team from front to back. Their secondary kind of played really well today. But really, what this game came down to was Queen City's defense. Because when you look at the way that the Queen City's offense is broken down, they're averaging about 200 passing yards. They're averaging over 100 rushing yards. They're averaging 20 first downs throughout their first two games from coming in. Tallahassee was giving up 20 first downs. They were only getting 11 or 12. They were really on these big plays. The difference was Queen City just couldn't stop, Tallahassee's offense. I can't give too much away because we're going to welcome them into Vancouver, into the cold. Next week, I finally get to go home with my team. I'm not going to give too much away, but it really just came down to Queen City in the fifth meeting between these two teams, not doing enough on the defensive side of the ball to prevent the big play. What really, kind of sets this apart when you look at because Steven touched on how these two teams have met quite a few times. What really sets it apart because this was the fifth meeting between the two, Tallahassee's won the last two by scores very similar to what this one was today of 38-17. Look out for Tallahassee maybe possibly being one of the teams throughout the next 5-6 seasons that really steps into the spotlight, because Queen City's had it for quite a few. Eric said four SFL championships. Frank's on his way, man. Don't discount the Pride.
Interesting take there. Could be a little change of the guard there. Mexico City's at the bottom of the East. Queen City has gone to Tallahassee before and gotten the doors beat off them, but they've also gone to Tallahassee and gotten a big win too. Hey, check it, simulationfl.net. If you go there now, not now necessarily, but if you were to go there during a live game, it actually tells you that we're live on Twitch right now, with a little alert icon on the top of the screen. So props to our webmaster for getting us hooked up with that. Tallahassee remains unbeaten, beats Queen City. Well, a truly baffling stat here. Oklahoma City falls to St. Louis 38-16. For the third straight week, the Renegades have more total yards than their opponent and lose. And by a lot, 22. Aaron Arrington today had 3 picks, 169 return yards, and an interception or in a touchdown, and spoiling the top performers segment we'll have at the end of the show. But you could see St. Louis only had 6 first downs on 342 yards of offense. If you've got more first downs and more total yards than your opponent each week, Steven, doesn't that mean that you're just giving up too many big plays?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the numbers are a little boggling to the mind, like you said. That just doesn't seem right. I mean, to me, screams a wonderful defensive performance and a terrible defensive performance. A wonderful defensive performance by St. Louis and a terrible one by Oklahoma City. But, their offense obviously isn't giving them they're giving that goodness, what I'm trying to say. Oklahoma City's has plenty of offensive firepower, it shows there. They're just not getting into the end zone enough. I mean, they're moving the ball down the field. Looks like between the 20s. When you get in that red zone, that all-important red zone there. They're just not cashing in enough. And as far as St. Louis, to only generate 6 first downs and have 291 passing yards screams to me that they've had some big chunk plays, obviously. But as far as getting first downs is concerned, 6 in a game is just not where you want to be. So to me, it screams great defensive performance on one end and a terrible one on the other.
Andy, what caught your attention today about the Gladiators?
Well, I mean, they played a solid game. I think, like Steven was talking about, when you can have 291 passing yards through 6 first downs, you're getting some big plays there, and the turnovers definitely helped. 6 from that defense. I mean, that's quite a
season high this year.
Yeah, that's quite a number. I mean, not just for them, but for a team in the league. I said it before the season too. I think St. Louis is one of those teams that also can bounce back this year. I like what their build looks like. I like what they're doing in the second half with 21 points. On the other side of the coin, I'm a little bit surprised to see Oklahoma City struggling out of the gate. Cam, you and I have talked about Oklahoma City usually starts the season very well and then struggles to finish with kind of the same ferocity. Now they're kind of starting out a little slow, so I'd be interested to keep an eye on what they do through the end of the season because it could be one of those things where they flip roles and then they go on a 8-game tear or something after starting 0-4. Who knows?
You never know. We've seen it before, certainly. From Missouri to Alaska, the Alaska Storm got a couple of key red zone defensive stops late. They also had a crazy pick 6 from Ryan Tobin off a deflection from Alex Dominguez that popped the ball up in the air. Alaska gets 14 points off of 2 turnovers, and that's really the difference against San Antonio in a battle of unbeatens. San Antonio played pretty well on the road, all things considering, and showed up today. There's a lot to unpack here, Stephen. What was your takeaway from Alaska and San Antonio?
Oh, well, for me, it really verified for me that the Vaqueros are the real deal this season. I mean, they came out of the gate, they beat us in week 1, and there might be a question in some people's eyes of whether San Antonio is real or not. They are, after this game, for me, solidifies it. They are real. They were able to stay in this game with our conference's hottest team in Alaska, and they were in it to the end. And that crucial pick 6 there that really helped determine this game, that has to be a Ryan Moody breakdown. There's got to be a Ryan, because it is just exactly what makes All Pro Football 2K8 just so real and so much better than Madden, in my opinion. Just that a quarterback can get hit and the ball can go nearly straight up in the air and fall right into a defender's lap, and he can hit a home run touchdown. That would be a perfect play for a breakdown like that. But for me, San Antonio, take heart. You really performed really well in this game, and I think you showed a lot of people that you're for real this season.
Somebody get Moody that clip. Andy, your thoughts on a couple of your fellow conference mates?
Yeah, we met Alaska in week 1, and we absolutely got walloped by them. And that kind of is the standard when you're playing a Max Paul offense and defense this season. With the build that he has, he's really looking to knock everyone out of the park. So I'm with Steven here. For San Antonio to put up 24 and only lose by 10 here in a big game, I think that's an incredible ode to Greg and Joey and what they're doing for the Vaqueros. I think this is one of those games where, you sim it a couple times, it could go a couple different ways. I think that these two are kind of your perennial powerhouses in the Western Conference this season. I think it'll be interesting to see down the road how each team finishes. Because 1 or 2 slips here or there, and you're knocked off of your perch as one of the top 2 teams in the West. This game might be something we look at and could be a turning point for either one of these teams. But matchup-wise, they matched up pretty well. I'm surprised that San Antonio was able to keep up passing yards-wise with the receivers that Alaska has. And then rushing yards-wise, they really put the hurt on Alaska with not having that star halfback. And they did their thing with Jason German getting 77 yards. You'd like to see those turnovers be limited, but I like how the Vaqueros kept Alaska to only 3 points based off of the turnovers, because that bodes really well for your defense.
VTAC repping Indy in the chat. Dion Hawkins and the Scout Man representing Tulsa. let's boost our viewership here. The kickoff's right around the corner. We got one breakdown left. Week 3 top performers look, and let's get the chat jumping for a couple of expansion teams that I don't think many people expected would be 2-0 through the first 2 weeks. Final game of the day was in San Francisco. San Francisco put up a lot of points late, but this game at one point was 35-3. Vancouver finally got over the hump, and they did it big with Jonathan Sanchez with a $162. And look at the average starting field position for Vancouver. It was nearly midfield. San Francisco just given Vancouver too many easy opportunities at points. Andy, we'll start with you on this one. Just how proud were you of your team today and just kind of getting out of that early season blues?
My gosh, it's great, Cam. Yeah, you go 0-2 and you start looking at what happened last season, starting out 0-4, and you're kind of shaking your head going, man, I just can't get it done in the first 4 weeks. I don't know what's going on. So it was really good to go out in the third week and get a win and be able to kind of, okay, this year's a little bit different from last year. I also think it was good for the guys in the locker room. They've been itching to have a pretty good game, and they finally got one. But hats off to San Francisco. I think they're a young team. We talked a lot about Ryan Moats' experience when I had discussions about this game this week. He's a new guy. He's coming into the league. He doesn't know kind of a lot of plays, what works, what doesn't. Never really had a coordinator position in the league. So I commend him because I thought going into the week, he has built a team that really can surprise some people. I was a little bit nervous going into the week. 409 yards of offense kind of shows you, San Francisco, they may have lost a couple of games, but don't count him out because Ryan, he's getting where he needs to be, and eventually this San Francisco team's going to start winning some games. And once that happens, with the way that they've built their players, look out because it's going to get dangerous.
Steven, quick thoughts on the Sharks falling 0-3 and Vancouver getting off the schneid.
Oh, well, very happy for Vancouver. Vancouver, they started 0-4 last season, like he alluded to, and they're getting a head start. That's the way I'm looking at it. I mean, they're in the third week and they got their first win, so that's great for them because it could only mean good things moving forward. As far as San Francisco is concerned, hey, they're just a young team, and they're going to learn. Just like we've had we've had plenty of times where a new team, someone who hasn't been a coordinator, comes in and joins this fraternity of guys that struggle in their first season. I'm a part of that fraternity. There's a lot of great guys in this league that are part of that fraternity. It just, you kind of have to earn your bones in this league, and there are not many guys can come in and that have as much football knowledge. Granted that Ryan Moats absolutely does have and experience. When you kind of get into this game and you find out that doesn't always translate exactly the way you think it is and as quickly. So just a matter of time.
Week 3 top performers, last segment of SFL today before we head out to the Greenwood District Stadium in Tulsa for their home opener. Tallahassee quarterback Christian Christensen today had a quarterback rating of 150, 21 of 31, 428 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Sanchez, 33 carries, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. Bain for the Pride on the D-line. He had the best day, 3 sacks. How about St. Louis's linebacker Aiden Friday? 15 total tackles. He had a sack, a couple of pass deflections, even forced a fumble. And St. Louis cornerback Aaron Arrington, as mentioned earlier, 5 tackles, 3 picks, 169 yards, and a pick 6 to his name. Almost 2 pick 6s. He was tackled at the 2-yard line on one of the interception returns. Steven, who from this list or outside of this list was your top performer today?
Yeah, no doubt for me, it's Arrington. Anytime you can get 3 interceptions as a cornerback in this league, a position that many undervalue in this league, including myself, to get 3 interceptions just has such an impact on the game and giving your offense so many opportunities. Remember, this is a St. Louis team that had 6 first downs, right? So his offense, he kept giving the ball to the offense and kept giving that offense a chance, and they made some big splash plays, but didn't do that consistent offensive work. But if you have a guy giving you 3 interceptions a game, you got a good chance to win every game.
And is your top performer on this list?
Oh, yeah, Christian Christensen's my guy. Arrington's impressive, 3 interceptions, like Steven was saying. I think if you get the right play against the right defense, you can get all those picks. My guy today was Christensen, 400 yards. The biggest part, though, for me, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, come on. You didn't even throw a garbage time interception? There's no way. I mean, that's going to boost, like, in theory, he could go 3 games and not equal that many interceptions for Tallahassee. And last year, one of the better quarterbacks was averaging, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And then to do it against the 4-time champion Queen City Corsairs, get out of here. He was my performer for the day.
All right, Andy's going to go back behind the glass and get our stats rolling tonight. Steven, you ready for this?
Let's get it on.
All right, Tulsa, Indianapolis coming up next right here on the SFL Network on Twitch TV.